All right, so let's dive into the playoffs, and we're going to start with our first game up on Saturday, and that is Chargers and Texans. We got two games on Saturday. This one is the first one up. Man, it kind of feels these teams are heading into opposite directions. One is trending upward, one is trending downward with where they're going. We talked a little bit briefly, about the Texans and about our division picks, but the Texans, they are, they've got a couple injuries to their wide receiver core, but they've just not been the same team. Meanwhile, the Chargers under Harbaugh, all they've won. That's what he does, and they've won this year.
Yeah, for sure. The Jim Harbaugh effect has been felt very positively for the LA Chargers, and like they started the year really ground and pound, trying to kind of work that offense. And they really opened things up a little bit more with Justin Herbert. Lad McConkey was a revelation this year. He was
Yes,
everything I was hoping he would be this season.
big time.
Really established himself as like a number one kind of receiver for them. I think one thing that's interesting here, Ryan. So point differential is kind of a pretty good marker, I feel like, for kind of how good are you really? How much are you winning by these games? And the Chargers are pretty solid 101. And the Texans was a perfectly even zero in point differential this season. And last season, I was kind of down on the Texans coming into this year because I was like, well, they really didn't beat anybody of impressiveness at all. Kind of similar story again this year, right? Like the wins are against the Colts, the Bears, the Jags. They do have a Bills win in there.
Yeah.
Patriots, Colts, Cowboys, Jags, Dolphins, Titans. Those are their wins. And so outside of one win against Buffalo back in week 5, outside of that, they really didn't beat anybody of substance. Every team that they ever had like a real challenge against, the Vikings, the Packers, the Lions, the Ravens and Chiefs, all those were losses, right? So once again, I feel like the Texans are pure pretenders, not contenders. I'm going Chargers in this first game on Saturday.
Yeah, I feel like, with the Texans, they draw that first place schedule for this year, and then you face all those NFC North teams, which were just, besides the Bears, all three of them were really good. They had their moments this year. Yeah, it felt the Texans. I don't know what necessarily has gone on with them. It feels like this team, led by their defense, and you really feel that with the Miko Ryans and just how this defense operates and plays. Like Stingley's really good on the back end. Then you got Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson just terrorizing quarterbacks. That's a the Miko Ryan style defense, but the offense, you add Stephon Diggs, and then Tank Dell, you don't have him at the start of the season. Then Diggs gets hurt. Nico gets banged up a little bit. All three of those guys have been banged up at one point or another. And it's just like the offensive line hasn't been all that great either. This offensive line, I take a look from it last year. They gave up 38 sacks. They increased it by 14. They went up to 52 this year. And Stroud, he hasn't had a whole lot of time in the pocket, and his turnovers, they've gone up. That he had 5 picks last year. He's got 12. So this offense has just gone in the wrong direction, but the Chargers have gone in the right direction. Like you said, the offense has really opened up. I don't know if any of us thought McConkey would be, a kind of a number one receiver in this Chargers offense. I'm glad he was because he helped out on fantasy and just was gangbusters. And he
I,
had 1,000
I did.
yards.
I did, Ryan. We can go back to our draft talks. I had Lad McConkey as a wide receiver one. Uh, I was very high on Lad McConkey back in the NFL draft, and I got plenty wrong. Look at those division picks, but a Lad McConkey big rookie year, that's one I got right.
I don't know if I would have thought 1,000 yards, in this Harbaugh style offense, but
That was the question to me, was just for
yeah.
volume purposes. Were there gonna be enough yards there? But you look around the rest of the offense, I didn't know who else was going to go to. So if Herbert was gonna throw for 1,000 yards, then maybe McConkey was gonna catch 1,000 yards.
Right, because Quentin Johnson's had a couple drop problems in this season. And,
He
Palmer's
had a good
another
year though.
guy.
Like a really a good step in the right direction year for him
Yeah,
though.
I
I don't
think
want
if
to
you're the
bury Quentin
Chargers,
Johnson.
yeah, if you're the Chargers, you're like, okay, there's some positive movement in this wide
Yeah.
receiver room. We saw something with Johnson. He's not a complete total bust. And then we hit on McConkey in the second round. So it's like, it's a trend in the right direction
Yeah.
with this offense. But you take a look at around this Chargers offense again. J.K. Dobbins, former Raven, and
Yeah.
Greg Roman's offense, 905 yards. He got banged up a little bit this year, but he came back, and that was a career high for him. So he was really doing good in this offense that, like you said, was a team that wanted to ground and pound early on, but then kind of opened things up. So this offense, and Herbert's been really good too. We talk about all
Yeah.
those quarterbacks with the MVP race, and he doesn't have the stats, but Herbert's been really good, really efficient, and like the volume wasn't there at the start, but it's increasing. Like he's done really good with that. I believe is no, he's thrown 21 touchdowns to 3 picks. So he's been
Yeah.
super good. This has probably been the best year of his career.
The volume is not there, but he is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. No question about
Yes.
that to me.
Yeah, and I feel like that kind of trends, who has the better quarterback here? And I think it's Herbert right now because Stroud
Yeah.
and this Texans offense is inconsistent. And, this defense with Jesse Minter, you didn't know Khalil Mack or Joey Bosa were going to come back and take pay cuts. You didn't know what this defense was going to give you, but Jesse Minter's done a good job. And this defense has given up a league low 17.6 points per game. And they're first in red zone defense. So they've been top notch on defense. And I feel like this is a game in which, the Chargers, they can really trend in that right direction. They can get into that second round and get a playoff win because it feels like the Chargers, for so long, have lacked that playoff win, and we've kind of made fun about them not getting it. So I feel like, yeah, Chargers. That I'd like them to go in and win this game and get some positive momentum in the right direction. Of course, this is the 4-5 matchup, so we'd have to see who else loses. But if they're the lowest seed remaining they could be headed to Kansas City for a matchup of Herbert versus Mahomes, which would be really fun. So yeah, Chargers. I think we're both in agreement on there. The Texans are just not. There's some questions that are going to have to be asked. Because inevitably once their season gets done.
Well, and Ryan, you mentioned they may have to go to the Chiefs if they're the only wild card team to win. And spoiler alert, Ryan, I think we can go through the next two games on the NFC side a little quickly because first of all, is the Baltimore Ravens versus Pittsburgh Steelers. Um, yes, the Ravens have a Steeler problem in the last like 6 years or so. Lamar has not played many of those matchups. He has not played well in most of them. Last time these two teams played on Christmas, though, pretty decisive Ravens win. The Steelers have been falling to pieces ever since,
Yeah,
and even before then. Ryan, again, I'm just a Ravens fan, but I think this game's pretty straightforward.
yeah. Steelers are huge underdogs in this game, like huge underdogs. Like
What is the
it's.
spread? You know?
I think it was close to. It wasn't quite double digits, but it was close. I think it was like 8 or 9.
Yeah.
So I mean, it makes
That's
sense
a little
because,
that's a little strong to me.
well, I mean, like what you said, the Steelers have fallen off a cliff,
Yeah.
offensively. Pickens, I feels like there's no interest in like, especially last week with him on his part. But the Steelers offense, last 4 games in this 4-game losing streak, they're only averaging 2 touchdowns per game. That's all they're
Yeah.
getting. That's not going to cut against this Baltimore offense. And yeah, the Ravens might have had a Steelers problem here, but I think they're going to be fine with that. I think that win gave them a little bit like, okay, we got this. And this is at Baltimore too. So it's like, hey, you're coming to our house to play this game. It is an AFC North game. So, I mean, weird things can happen. The Steelers, they can. I think the Ravens for them, if they find themselves down this game, I feel like it's more so to do with them than the Steelers because it feels like if there's dumb penalties, drops, stuff like that. I feel like that's the stuff that'll kill the Ravens more so than the Steelers actually finding a answer to their offensive woes.
Yeah, completely. I mean, look, the Ravens made a Steelers problem. The Steelers have a football problem, especially on the offensive side of things, right? Like, I think they should go back to Justin Fields. I know Russ had a good little blip in the middle of the season there, but like the only team he actually played really well against was Cincinnati, and we saw what their defense was. It's nothing impressive at all. Like at some point, I figured they'd go back to Fields. They never did, though. Um, yeah, I mean on defense, you always have TJ Watt. Like so like there's always that chance that TJ just wrecks a game.
Yeah.
But man, like with the way this Ravens offense cooks and the way they can really take a pass rush out of a game, I think is really impressive. So yeah, I got Ravens pretty easily in this one.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty easily. Well, Peter's going to be sad because he's got Penn State on Thursday and he's got the Steelers on Saturday. So it's about what, maybe a 24-hour window, 36-hour window between each game. So have a chance for ultimate sadness there for Peter right there. Although I do have Penn State winning, so there's, I think if he could take one, I think he would take Penn State. I think he would take Penn State.
Yeah, and really for the first time in my life, I'm rooting for happiness for Peter Lewis. I kind of am rooting for Penn State to go out and win it all. I really am. Like the guy's been through it all, so I'm actually rooting for one bit of happiness here for Peter Lewis. And I know he'd be insufferable if it happened, but it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make.
Well, this a little bit later on, but I did pick in the title game a certain Penn State to face another Big Ten team that's in the other semifinal. So it's a one that says like, hey, we want to be called the, you know.
That that took me a second. Now I'm like,
So
wait, who
st
else is playing?
I kind of stepped on my own toes there a little bit, but yeah, it'd be 10 days of just maximum nervousness and panic from Peter because instead of that game being regular season, it's amplified by about 100
Yeah.
because it's a championship game. So,
Yeah, and the more I think about it, the more fun it would be to see Peter lose in the championship to them. So actually, let's have that happen.
oh, Franklin's gonna call another 4th and 5 weird call, and it's just gonna be like, this is the remix, you know? Oh
All
man.
right, that's enough minor league football, Ryan. Let's go on to the Bills and Broncos.
Let's do it. Broncos, like you mentioned earlier, Sean Payton has done a really good job with this team. Bo Nix has been outstanding. He's thrown 29 touchdown passes, uh, outdoing Jane Daniels in that department. He's done really good in Sean Payton's system. Cortland Sutton has done really well. He had a big game against the Chiefs last week. Marvin Mims, they've carved out a role for him. I know you're a big Marvin Mims guy. I remember that. Um,
Yeah, yeah, they don't all hit.
But they've done really well so far, and this defense has been spectacular. In fact, Vance Joseph, we didn't mention him. He could
Yeah,
end up getting some calls because of this. Because you take a look at this defense, they lead the league in sacks, and they got Nick Benito, who took a jump up in production. Zach Allen's taking a jump up. All those guys, they've done really well. And then you got Patrick Surtain, who's one of the best cover corners in the game. And so, I mean, I guess life is so much easier when you got one of those guys that just
yeah,
locks down one side of the field, and they got that. So this Broncos team, they're fun to watch defensively and see what they do. And then you got this Bills game in which we talked about the lack of a real kind of a true number one for the Bills. I guess Shakir's in that role. I feel like, Surtain, you can kind of just move him around since there's no really true number one and just have him take down one side of the field. But how do you feel about the Bills in this game against the Broncos? You think the Broncos can give the Bills a game here?
yeah. I think they can at least hang in there a little bit. Like you said though, with Sertan, yeah. I said watching that Bengals and Bills game a couple weeks ago during the Fantasy Football Championship. I had a league where I had Higgins going against Chase, and I was always so relieved every time I saw number two following Chase around. They really could use a second one because that's why Higgins torched him. But with this matchup though, there's nobody to take away in Buffalo. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how the defense approaches this thing for Denver in that regard. I do think Denver's a team that does a very good job at like excuse me, avoiding being totally blown out, I guess. And so I think
Hmm.
they're going to hang in there. Good defense. I think Bo Nix are going to see a couple rookie mistakes, but Sean Payton does a good job, though. It reminds me a lot of Daniel Jones in 2022 when the Giants did a good job of just like taking the ball away from their own quarterback, if that makes sense, where it's like, we're not going to let you screw up. We're going to make this thing easy. And if it's not there, you run, you know? And Bo Nix can do that. I
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
jokingly call him Mountain Time Daniel Jones, but that is I don't mean it to be as harsh as that comes across because Daniel Jones got released this year, but like 2022 Daniel Jones feels like that is rookie year Bo Nix, which is impressive, because that was like year 6 of Daniel Jones. So hey, at least he's ahead of schedule a little bit, right? No, but Sean Payton has done a great job with this team, but I think the road comes to an end here. Buffalo, they are one of the top 3 teams in the East, in the AFC, and they're going to show it, I think. And so, yeah, I'm not expecting. I think of the 3 losers that we have this weekend on the AFC side between the Broncos, Steelers, and Texans, I think Texans have the best chance at winning, but that has more to do with their opponent. The Broncos, I think they can give the Bills more of a game than a lot of people are going to expect, but I think at the end of the day, the Bills come away.
Yeah, yeah, I'm kind of with you there. The thing with Bo Nix though, he needs a cool nickname, Danny Dimes. He doesn't
Yeah.
have that one. We got to think of one for Bo. He doesn't have one. So that's the only thing. But yeah, this one I'm going with the Bills. And like you said, the Broncos have kept things close this year. The only real blowout was to the Ravens, 41-10. That was the only real blowout they had. But besides that, they kept things close. And I will say this, against teams over 500, and I don't know if I want to count the Chiefs game last week or not since it was just the Chiefs second string guys, but their defense has allowed, around 8 points more than, compared to what they've given up to teams below 500. And to the teams above 500, they only got one win. I guess if you want to count the Chiefs, that's two. But in those games that, you know, if you want to take the Chiefs game away, they're 1-6. So against teams over 500, they're not that great. But I'm going with the Bills here. And so the Broncos, they can play them close. I do think the fact that Surtain, you can place them anywhere. And also, they're a pretty good run defense, and the Bills like to run, as evidenced with James Cook having an awesome year. But yeah, going with the Bills here. It feels like besides the Chargers Texas one, we're taking chalk in the AFC.
So Ryan, admittedly, I did not listen to a single word you just said. And that's okay because I'm over here trying to make a nickname for Bo Nix. And I've got 2 in the workshop here. I'm trying to find a third that could play off a little bit better. I got nothing, but I've got Bang on the Money Bo and oh shoot, where'd the other one go? Oh, on the button Bo, or maybe Bow on the button. Those are, I think Bang on the Money Bo. I think that's the Danny Dimes, equivalent here. But Bo Nix, I'm not getting much good alliteration here through the old thesaurus.com.
Yeah, that's tough. But hey, I think he'll take being ahead of schedule, Daniel Jones, than an actual nickname. I think he'll take
Yeah, I mean,
he'll
look,
take
it's
that.
better than Mountain Time. Mountain Time Daniel Jones was my first one. And yeah, he's better than that. He deserves more. He really does. I've been probably too low on Bo Nix.
Yeah. So that's the AFC right there. Let's talk about the NFC. This is the 7-2 game, and all the NFC games. Of course, that two of those NFC games are on Sunday, with the Broncos Bills also being on Sunday, and then we got the Vikings Rams on Monday night. So we're talking about Packers Eagles first. These two teams have played each other. I found that out a lot during the research. A lot of these teams have played each other, but a lot of them were earlier on in the season. Uh, really evidenced by these three NFC matchups. Packers Eagles played in that game in Brazil, week one,
Yep.
with the
Yep.
Eagles. That being a high scoring game. These teams are a little bit different now heading
Very
into this
different.
game.
Yeah, especially the Eagles. That's secondary for the Eagles. They really turned the corner midseason. Early on in this season, I know for me in fantasy matchups, like the Eagles were a defense I was almost targeting, right? Especially for my wide receivers. Later in the season, around like week 7, week 8 or so, that really flipped on its head. This young secondary really figured out what they're doing in the system. Eagles defense now one of the better ones in the league, and yeah, that's gonna be an interesting matchup because the Packers receivers is a deep group everyone kind of has their role. There's no real number one. There's not even really a number two, if you ask me. But it's a lot of guys, and they're all good enough at what they do. No Christian Watson.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he tore his ACL, and so he is out for the playoffs and probably all of next season. So that's a bummer for him. But I got the Eagles here though. I think also real quick, Ryan, because I have not seen, is Jordan Love okay?
He appears to be okay. Now,
Okay.
LaFleur did say that at one point he didn't have any feeling in his elbow, and that was on uh Sunday. But he did say if it was a more critical situation, he would have gone back in.
Okay.
So well, I don't know. We'll see. We won't know until I guess Sunday how 100% he is. So
Sure, sure. But
but the Watson one is definitely a killer because he is a guy that stretches the field, and like you said, there's really no top option here for this Packers offense, in which that stretch the field option would really help out against this Eagles secondary. Instead, you just got to find ways to, you're probably going to go underneath a little bit more. Got to find some place for Jaden Reed, Romeo Dobbs, get him involved. So I feel like you're going to miss that speed element that Watson brings. Not always the most consistent guy, but it helps out in stretching that defense. And like you said, this Eagles defense, it's a complete 180 from what they were last year. And Darius Slay's playing a little bit better, but yeah, those young guys, Mitchell and DeJean, excellent investment. They've been dynamite Fangio's system. And also Jalen Carter. You know, I remember thinking back to our preview that those young guys for Philly, they had to do well this year, and they've really stepped up and they've done well. They've embraced their role. They've gotten better as the course of the season has gone on. That's why they're one of the top units in this playoff right now on defense.
And then on the Philly offensive side of the ball, their passing game has been very unimpressive. I actually was just doing my fantasy ranking for 2025, and I am terrified of AJ Brown. Devonta Smith is a guy who I just can't quit, but I'm less in on him than usual because their numbers were way down this year. AJ called it out mid-season, like, "Hey, we're good, we're winning, but where's the ball?"
Hmm.
Part of that probably just comes from the fact that Saquon ran all over everybody. So when you have a running game that good, clock keeps churning, you just keep gaining first downs. Like there's no need to throw the ball so much. But I think at some point in this playoffs, it could come back to bite them. But to me, it's just not going to be in this game, though. I think they're going to have enough here. I think a big game. I think for Devonta Smith. I think there's a chance that we see AJ get taken away a little bit in this one. That's always a fear against the Packers and Alexander. But I think the offense has enough there in Philly.
I think I read Alexander went on IR. I'm not sure.
Oh, did he?
I think he did go on IR. I think I did research that and I saw like, oh, he went on IR. So
Then big
that
game for both.
yeah, you don't want to head into this game with Carrington Valentine, Keyshawn Nixon, and Eric Stokes as your top corners.
Yeah.
You know, heading against those guys. Yeah, that's going to be the thing I think with the Eagles going forward is can this pass offense, can they really start to find their groove to go along with what Saquon can do in the running game? And a lot of that has been to do with Jalen Hurts too, and also how healthy is he going to be? He's missed the last couple games, with that concussion. So how well is he going to do? So going Eagles there, but that's a definite question right there. So yeah, Eagles feel like the team right there they'll make it out of this 7-2 matchup. We were talking about this next game pre-show or earlier on, Commanders Bucks. This matchup ought to be fireworks on Sunday. It ought to be fireworks. There's not going to be a whole lot of defense in this game. To bring it back to college football, it's like a classic Big 12 matchup. It's just offense, offense, offense. Because I'm looking at the stats here, man. Both these teams, they're top 10 in total offenses. The Bucks have a top third down offense. They're top five in points per game. The Commanders are not far behind them. It's just that both these teams, they're dynamite on offense. And, to start with the road team with the Commanders, Jaden Daniels, another rookie quarterback here that's done really well. There's a little bit of a lull mid-season, and you didn't know, like, is this Cliff Kingsbury? Is this just the rookie wall? But they've found their groove again. This is a top flight running team, too. They're a top five run offense with Daniels and Brian Robinson. But the receivers, it's just really Terry McLaurin, and that's it. You can throw in Zach Ertz as a tight end, but it's not it, you know. And their defense, there's not going to be a whole lot of it, I think, in this game. It's there's not going to be a whole lot of it.
No, I like the Commanders defense more than the Bucks defense. At least a little bit. It's not neither one is exactly an impressive unit. Don't get me wrong there. I think the Commanders are gonna be able to hold on for dear life just a little bit more than the Bucks will. That front at least has a little bit something there going on. Although Bucks get to the quarterback too, just a hair. Um, I'm gonna go Commanders here though. I think Jaden's just gonna bring the electricity, and I this is definitely I think of the entire first round. This is the game I had the least conviction on. This is the most coin flip one to me. I really don't know which way this one's gonna go to, and I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think you always kind of look forward to those games where it's just a pure coin flip. You don't know which way it's going to go. Um, I want to look up what the over under is. I'm sure it's absurd.
It should
With
be the
the
highest of the weekend by a good margin.
it should be with how good these teams are. Um, I think I'll take the Bucks though, but I will say I'm with you on this being the coin flip. I'm going the other side of the coin flip right there. But I do think the Commanders have the best chance. I feel like we'll talk about this next game, but they have the best chance, out of the six, and three matchups here. I think you know, they got a better chance than the Steelers do of, being the Ravens. But the touch on the Bucks real quick, they've got two good rookies right there. Bucky Irving, who's gone for over a
Yeah.
thousand yards. Jalen McMillan has done really
Hmm.
well too. And you're thinking like, oh crap, we just lost Chris Godwin for most of the season, and here comes McMillan, and he steps up, and Baker has done well under Lean Cohn's offense. I mean, he's been incredible. Baker's thrown for 41 touchdowns this year,
Yeah.
about 4,500 yards. He's been incredible. So I think
Yeah.
he's going to be incredible in this one. It's going to be an incredible quarterback battle.
Yeah, I mean the Baker Mayfield Renaissance has really. I mean, you said incredible is the word that come to my mind too, where and I think Evans is definitely a big part of that too. It was awesome to see him get the 1,000 yards again, keep that streak alive. Went down to the wire. Let me tell you, they may have called in a QB kneel, and Baker said, we're throwing this thing to Mike.
Yeah.
So that was really really cool to see have happen there, but. I don't know. It is truly one where I don't know what's going to happen in this one. I'm going commies, but this one can easily go that other direction with the Bucks either. And I think either way, I don't think either of these two teams are going to make it long. If they do win though, because of that defense, I think the second round is going to be the end for
Yeah.
both of them.
Yeah. I think that lack of the defense is going to hurt them in the next round if they move, whoever moves on. And let's go to our final matchup Vikings, Rams. Matt, there's probably no other team in this playoff that I'm just like, this team is so inconsistent. It may be the Steelers, but the Rams, they've shown signs of being able to compete with these top teams. They beat the Vikings earlier in the season. They beat the Bills a few weeks ago in a high-flying 44-42 matchup. But since then, the offense has fallen off a cliff. I believe from week 15 to 17, they scored 44 points combined. So you have that, then you have this final game in which they didn't play their starters. They've been inconsistent on the offensive side, to say the least. It does show that they can go boom, but it also shows like, hey, they can go bust too.
Yeah, and that's just really hard to trust when you get to the playoffs, right? Those kind of boom bust offense. And you're right though, when things click with Cup and Nakua and Stafford, my goodness, 44 points against Buffalo, right? Like it can happen. But then you turn right around and you put up 12 in that snooze fest on a Thursday night against the 49ers, right? You put up 19 against the Jets. You put up 13 against Arizona. Like what has happened since then? Nothing. And so that being the bit of the snooze fest that we've been on ever since that big game, I'm going Vikings here. I think that Vikings offense shows back up and shows back out, and I just don't think the Rams are going to keep up with it. You do get the very fun Kevin O'Connell, Sean McVay matchup here with the head
Yeah.
coaches. That'll be a great time to kind of see that go back and forth. But I'm going Vikings here. That offense, they proved enough to me to really kind of come through in this regard. My goodness, what a year they've had. Did not see it coming. But yeah, I'm going Vikes here. Rams just too up and down for me.
Yeah, I'm going Vikings here too. Again, it's crazy that we have a 14 win team in here as a fifth seed. It's absolutely crazy to think about that. But I take a look back. The Vikings they did lose to the Rams, and that was in the stretch where they had back-to-back losses in 4 days, uh, to the Lions and to the Rams. So not quite that scenario here, but they are going back to SoFi. And which fun fact, SoFi could host both the AFC and NFC championships. If some things go a certain way, which I don't know how that's gonna go, but Vikings, I feel really good about where they can go, and they could be if they're the lowest seed remaining, they're going to be heading right back up to Detroit for the rubber match and see if they can get the win over Detroit. But yeah, with I think the offense does get back on track here. It kind of needs to because the Lions, with what they were able to do, with not a whole lot of help in the cornerback room and on that defense that's just taking hit after hit, it's kind of noticeable. They made Darnold hold on to the ball too long, and Amik Robertson did a great job on Jefferson. But I like the Vikings here. I will say the Rams defense, on defense, they could get after it. They do have a lot of young pieces. Jared Verse has really come on. He could probably win Defensive Rookie of the Year, but
Yeah.
yeah, Vikings here. The Rams offense has just been too inconsistent for my liking. If they were more consistent, then I think I could talk myself into this being a really high scoring game. But I like this Vikings team. I think also Flores. I think he's just going to make like difficult for Stafford. With Van Ginkel and Grenard, Stafford, there's no mobility there. So you can get after him, and the offensive line has been questionable at best. So it's Vikings, definitely.
Yeah,
So
I completely agree.
yeah, so pretty much, I mean, so we split on Commanders Bucks, and I think everything else we were kind of like we agreed on as far as all those other matchups. So I think it's going to be a fun weekend. It's going to be, as they say, it's a wild card weekend. So it's going to be a fun one, and we'll see which team heads up to Detroit and which team heads up to Kansas City because we're going to be getting some good second round matchups with those teams. Because if Baltimore and Buffalo both win, we get that round two. Chiefs welcome, whoever's the lowest seed remaining, and then we might have Minnesota and Detroit round three in the divisional round. So
I
it
mean,
should be a fun playoff.
a Commanders Lions game would also just be total fireworks. So like I'm hoping for that one. Quite frankly, around two.
Either way, I think we're going to be set up to have some really nice matchups here in round two, and hopefully, I didn't mention our Super Bowl prediction. It's still intact. Both of ours are still intact. We both picked Chiefs Lions, so
Really?
so that's we're still good to go.
Well, I am backing out on my Lions side of that. Really quickly, I'm going Eagles from the NFC side. I think there's enough of the injuries on that Detroit defense. I think Philly can go in there and get the win on them.
Yeah, the amount of injuries Detroit has just taken up on that side have just been
Yeah,
staggering, and it's not any one position group. It's everything.
yeah.
From defense line to secondary, everything. And that's why I think Aaron Glenn is probably going to get some looks for a head coaching job because of what he's done. Just bringing
Well,
in guys off the street.
Ryan, to celebrate our playoff picks here, I wore my Kansas City Chief themed Stone Cold Steve Austin Kansas City 316 shirt today. Uh, because I knew we were at some point we were going to talk about the Chiefs. So give me a hell yeah on the Kansas City Chiefs repeating. I'm not hoping for it. I'm picking it. I would much rather see a team in purple have a Vince Lombardi trophy this year. It's been it's been the same gap between the first two Super Bowls as is from the second Super Bowl to now, Ryan. So
That's
the Ravens
crazy.
are due. Ravens are due.
The Ravens are due, but as we learn, the football universe doesn't necessarily think too much of that sometimes. So unfortunately, in some case with our teams. So yeah, I'm kind of feeling we both picked the Chiefs in that prediction to win it. So I
Yeah.
think we're both rolling with the Chiefs getting that three-peat. Although I think I'm with you there. I'd rather see somebody else get the win. You know, so
Yeah.
anyway,
Because
so
my wife over here is way too
uh,
cocky and arrogant these days.
uh-oh.
You know, she's very uncomfortable being the villain, Ryan. Very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I imagine it can't be fun. It can't be fun being the villain or being a fan of the villain. So Patriots fans, Chiefs fans are finding out what it's like to be that really quick.
Oh yeah, they are.